Hatman, do you live in an old house? Does it creak at night? Mine does. My mom always said that it's the house settling, resting its tired bones before another long day of two kids smashing it to pieces. It isn't. We lived in a small two-bed house near the river in the worst part of town. Despite our 10-year age difference, I had to share a room with my sister, but it was mostly okay, save for our nightly argument about the hall light. My sister wanted the door left ajar so her bed was bathed in artificial light, but I needed total darkness. Sophie is the precious rainbow baby, so she gets her way obviously. If I moan, I am told that most girls my age have already left for university, so my options are to suck it up or move out. So I hide under my covers like a baby, but it doesn't help as I know it's out there, watching me with those red eyes. I can't remember when I first saw it, but I know it wasn't in the old place, the smelly flat above a chip shop, so I think it's always been here, in this house. At first I thought I was dreaming, or maybe just seeing things when the shadows twitched, so I'd sit up and rub my eyes, only to find it had gone. I guess it grew bolder. Once it knew my parents would just send me back to bed without bothering to check my room. It doesn't bother to hide anymore or pretend to be anything other than it is. I think he feeds off my fear, the Hatman. It hasn't harmed me yet, as far as I know anyway, but I'd know it was evil even without the glowing demonic eyes or sharp teeth. My sister doesn't see it. She's been awake once or twice while it was in the room, but she just carries on doom scrolling TikTok while muttering about her crazy sister. She has nightmares every night though, has done since the first night, but she won't talk about them. My parents have talked about taking her to a psychologist, but NHS waiting lists are a thing and we don't have the money for private. My dad isn't around much. He kept his old job hours away, so only comes home at the weekend. He didn't want to move either, but my grandmother had a stroke and mom said she was moving with or without him. All they do these days is argue, so he has zero tolerance for my complaints. All he really does is stare at the television or chain smoke in the garden. It is nice being closer to the city and its many distractions, but none of us like the house. The pipes scream whenever we turn on the taps and only 3 radiators work. But none of it really matters, I suppose, compared to the Hatman. There's actually more than one shadow person here. I've seen them all over the house, but only the Hatman seems obsessed with me. He should get a job or something. I did some reading on ley lines and roads of the dead, and I think the creaking sound is a door opening between worlds, as I only ever see them after I hear it. Unfortunately, none of my research suggested a way to stop the crossing. I know they're attracted to negativity, but if relate can't stop my parents constantly fighting, I don't see how I can. I tried ignoring the Hatman. I tried asking him what he wanted from me, but all he did was stare. I'm not religious, and while prayer obviously irritated him, it didn't drive him away either. Turning the lights off meant I couldn't see him, but I knew he was still there. I tried holy water on the walls, but that just made my mom start screaming about damp, and that didn't work either. I woke up at 3 a.m. one night to find him on the ceiling above me, staring down with hate in his eyes. He dropped on top of me like a shroud, and I screamed the house down as I felt an awful pressure all over my body. Mom wasn't impressed, but Sophie didn't seem surprised, which worried me. I think the Hatman needs fear. Maybe he can convert it into energy, as that night was the first time he seemed to have any real substance. I felt him, I could smell the awful dank mustiness of him, and I had scratches on my arms where he'd held me down. But how could I stop being afraid of a monster? I know others have seen these shadow people too. No one knows exactly where they come from or what they want, but almost everyone agreed that they're evil and mean us harm. I didn't know what to do. No one would listen to me. I was forced to lie there in the light every single night while we stared at each other, and with each one that passed he seemed to get more angry. On Wednesday night when I went up to bed, it wasn't there, and I fell asleep waiting for him to make an appearance. I woke up sometime in the middle of the night and heard an awful voice whispering something. Sophie mumbled in return, as though answering a question. I tried waking her, of course, but in the end I must have fallen back to sleep. The next night I tried bribing her with hot cocoa, asking her what she remembered about the previous night. She was odd and furtive, like she was hiding something, and I didn't like how she watched me when I went to wash up the mugs. She got in trouble at school that day, which was a surprise. She's normally a model pupil. She wouldn't play with her friends, and all she wanted to do was sit in the front room and draw pictures, using a lot of black felt tips. When my mom asked to see Sophie, started screaming and tore them all up, which meant in another historic event, she was sent to her room. As she climbed up the stairs, she turned and smiled at me over her shoulder, and there was something of the Hatman in it. By the time bedtime arrived, all seemed normal again. My sister ate her dinner and had her bath, even asking for a story, which she hadn't done for a while. When I went to bed a few hours later, the Hatman wasn't there, but when I woke in the middle of the night, my sister was hiding under her duvet watching me. I'm almost sure I saw a glimmer of red. After that, my sister became devious and mean. She pinched other children in school so often a letter was sent home. The school hamster went missing, and Sophie was the main suspect, having been seen lingering around the cage at break. My mom tried talking, shouting, and finally took to her bed with a bottle of wine. I noticed my dad had stopped calling home during the week. Last time he came back, his coat smelled like perfume, though no one mentioned it. The next night I woke up to see Sophie lying under her bed, and when she smiled at me, her teeth were too long. My mother's door was locked, so I went downstairs and could hear Sophie scuttling about on the floors for most of the night. Close to dawn I screamed as I felt something sharp stab into my leg. My sweet little sister had stabbed me with a pair of scissors. Thankfully they were too big for her to handle properly, so the wound wasn't as bad as it could have been. That time she did see a doctor though, and she wasn't home for a few days while they assessed her. I slept well. The hat man wasn't there, and for the first time I felt safe. When my sister came home again, it was decided that we wouldn't share a room anymore. That first night I woke curled up on the lumpy sofa to find her standing in the corner of the living room. My mother responded to my cries for once, and my sister was taken back to her room. The sharp knife returned to the kitchen drawer. The next morning my dad was home and the kitchen had been child-proofed again like it was when Sophie was a toddler. I heard him screaming at my mom, and later that day he left again, that time with a suitcase. He wasn't wearing his wedding ring. My sister went away for a while, and when she came home for a second time she was nothing like she was. She drew her pictures with black felt tips or just stared at the television screen until my mother brought in her medicine. She hasn't said a single word to me since she stabbed me with those scissors, but she watched me a lot, like a cat with a mouse. I sofa surf a lot these days, and stay with friends as much as I can. I can't keep a job as I don't sleep and keep making mistakes. My mother spends most evenings with a bottle of wine, and my sister can usually be found under her bed scratching at the floorboards or cackling to herself. She's stopped leaving the hallway light on at night and closes her bedroom door. Sometimes I hear whispering. The house still creaks every night, more often now. Yesterday I think I saw another hat man in the living room. It had a different shape and the eyes looked more yellow than red. There must be more than one of them out there. I hear scratching a lot, even during the day, and there are strange smells that no one can explain. Sometimes there's tapping on the walls. We have dead birds in the garden most mornings and flies thrown around the windows whether they're open or closed. My mother used fly paper at first, but doesn't bother anymore as they just come back the next day. I heard something calling my name earlier from the basement. It was my voice. I don't have anywhere else to sleep tonight. I've worn out my welcome at most places, and the car got repossessed earlier today. The local police aren't too kind to the homeless either. Mom hasn't come home from work. The locks are still on the kitchen cabinet and I put a chair in front of the door. There are a lot more shadow people tonight, more than I've ever seen before. I don't like that. I'm scanning the room when my eyes catch on a pack of my dad's cigarettes. Something about it bothers me and I can't figure out what. I've just realized that there used to be a lighter beside it, didn't there? I'd better go check, but I'm going to post this first as a warning to others. I think they wait to be noticed in the dark. They travel in groups. They like old houses but will linger anywhere with small children. They're more powerful in some places, but they grow stronger if you're afraid. I think they're like those other things I read about once, the things you're not supposed to name because you call them to you. I think once you know about them, about the doorways they travel through, you're at risk. But the risk is never zero. They're there anyway, you just don't see them yet. Sleep in the dark. Avoid looking into mirrors at night. Stay away from anywhere where shadows group together, like under beds. Most of all, ignore the creaks.